Hi, and welcome back to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. Tonight, we've got a special one-on-one event here. So I'm going to be your host, Jim Nettles, and Marisa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, I am Marisa Wolf. I am a giant nerd, and I write science fiction and fantasy and all the little points in between I can get my grubby little fingers on.
Well, grab your little fingers on, people you can kill, all that kind of
MVG.
on the
So,
page,
yeah.
on the page.
Yes.
So you have a couple of new little toys coming out, including that first one from Bane.
I do. So I have been incredibly lucky in that I have these six co-authored novels with three amazing co-authors. And this year, February 6th, my debut solo novel is coming out from Baen Books. It is called Beyond Enemies. There you go. It's so forthcoming. I only have a bookmark to show you, not the actual book. But I am so excited about this. So coming soon.
So tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah.
What's
Uh,
what's the big setup?
the big setup. It's about a girl in her tank, the age old tale, very classic girl in her tank, the shenanigans they get into. It's basically far future. Humans have perfected AI, but in order to perfect AI and help the AI programs figure out these people kill good, these people kill bad, they get grown partially into a human brain. So humans are genetically engineered to host an AI. And then the AI, therefore, gets the training alongside their human partner to differentiate what war is good and what war is bad. And so Talon and her AI B are, living their lives fighting the war. They're a tank. It's pretty cool. It's their like lifelong ambition. And then they find out the war they think they're fighting isn't at all the fight that they're in. And they need to decide, do we status quo it and just keep on going? It's not that bad. Or do we chance the entire universe and civilization as we know it burning down? And I would like to remind you all, they are a tank. So what's the point of a weapon of mass destruction if there's nothing to mass destruct?
A girl in her tank. Of course, the
Girl
first
in her
thing I think
tank.
about is Lori Petty and Tank Girl. Uh,
Nice. Yes. Yes.
and for fun facts,
Mm-hmm.
um, let's do it. Let's fall in love, which is one of the songs from that. Entered the public domain on January 1st. So,
Oh, how lovely.
Reporter's version entered the public domain. Useless, random trivia that has nothing to do with anything
Very
on the
important.
lack of caffeine and sleep deprivation.
Oh man, being on calls since 8 a.m. That's gonna do it to you. Yeah.
So, tell us a little bit deeper about who are we hanging out with? The girl in our tank.
Yes, so the girl in her tank. If you happen to have a chance to read Chicks in Tank Tops, an anthology that came out from Baen last January, full of stories of girls and their tanks. Also, the cover, y'all, is a girl in a tank top, the shirt, in a tank top, the top of a tank. And that delights me at any point when I see it. So in that, you meet Talon and B for the first time when they are very, very new in their career. And that was the short story that would not leave me alone. I was basically haunted by these ladies' voices and wrote this whole novel about them. So you were spending time without giving anything away with Talon and B and some of their compatriots. But you're in a very tight focus of Talon's perspective.
So, what what brought you to kind of create this story? I mean, I know the anthology, but
Mhm.
what was it that really inspired this one?
Man, so I wrote this short story. I had a lot of fun with it. And then their voices were in my head. So there are a lot of things that I've been influenced by in my writing career. The very first book series that I fell insanely in love with, like in the way that only a preteen who's a nerd can fall deeply in love with something, was Anne McCaffrey's Dragon Riders of Pern. And so there is a little bit of, it's not quite the same, of course, but there's a little bit of that dragon rider bond in the AI and their genetically enhanced soldiers that they inhabit, and the snark between Talon and B I just kept thinking of different things and different things that would happen to them after the short story, and they were very insistent that things needed to happen. So so that went into it. The Bolo books, I mean, just intelligent tanks as a whole are pretty delightful. And then, current affairs. So, how the government treats their soldiers, how um, society deals with ongoing war that lasts for, I don't know, a person's entire lifetime. I think all of those kind of mixed together and played together for the story.
So without getting
I know.
spoilery,
No
right?
spoilers.
That's one of the. But you know how is this hard sci-fi? Is this more space opera? I mean, obviously there's a little snark in it. I know your voice.
Yeah.
So
Fair. Uh-huh.
this is like people will tell me, I read your tech article. I can still sense the snark behind it,
Still
right?
know it's you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So where are we at on the spectrum?
I would say it's a little bit mill sci-fi, but it's very light on the mill because I am a civilian. So I will not pretend that I deeply understand the military, but I have a lot of friends and loved ones who I think very, very highly of. So I think there's some military stuff in there for sure, and have checked it by some active duty and some veterans to make sure it's not going to embarrass anybody. And then I would say more space opera. I did some science. I read a lot about quantum mechanics, like enough that my brain was like, we were an English major just on purpose, just FYI. But I did a lot of reading about how we think quantum entanglement may or may not work. But I did not do any orbital mechanic math, and I won't pretend that I did. So it's closer to space opera than hard science, but I did do my research.
Well, I just to not break it, there was a whole nother paper that came out this week about how we think that, all of that just may not work,
Oh yeah. I mean, who knows? It's all magic. Like I read this really fascinating article about how our consciousness, the what we define as human consciousness, is quantum entanglement. And I was like, Jesus Christ. It's like for a long time it was dark matter. Everything is dark matter, and now it's everything is quantum entanglement. So who knows?
So again, without getting spoilery, there's something to you that is like one of those favorite little scenes, one of those little favorite Easter eggs, something you tugged in the story that, you know, you just couldn't resist but to stick it in.
Yes. I'm trying to think of how to say it without spoilers. There are some snarky comments that are strongly influenced by some military folks that I know. So I will leave it at that. I feel like some phrases will feel very familiar to some former military type folks.
All right, so who did you tuckerize in this, and do they know it?
I didn't. So I was, oh, actually, no, that's a lie. I did. So at Fantasy 2 years ago, I think it was Fantasy, they did an auction for Tuckerizations. And this incredible woman, Rebecca, I won't give her last name because I don't know how much she wants to be out in the world. But she won the Tuckerization, and it was for a different book. And then I approached her later in the con. And I was like, hey, I saw that you won this. I'm super excited. Also, I have a book that's going to come out before this book, and it's my first book with Bane. She was like, yes, just yes, whatever. Yes, I want yes. So there is a very, very cool person. I won't give it away because she doesn't know yet. That is based on Rebecca, and I am very excited. I hope she loves it when she sees it. So yes, she knows, but she doesn't know what the character is or what she does.
So, what else does anybody who is ready to pre-order this book,
Mhm.
because of course they have to, right? This has got to be
Sure.
on the top of that to be read pile.
Look
What
at
else
this.
does somebody need to know?
Okay, so what you need to know is one, this cover is freaking amazing. It's done by Sam Kennedy. He is amazing. And I feel like it's a very kind of true to life. There are explodey things, there are shooty things, there's a very thoughtful lady. I think you should know that I think I'm hilarious, and so I think the snark is very funny. You should know that I am really looking to pull you through a gamut of emotions. So the story is important. The journey that Talon and Bee go on is very important. But the most important parts of the book are Talon and Bee and the relationship between them. So I hope that you laugh. I hope that you get a little a little choked up. And I hope that at some point you go, huh, what would I do in that situation? Um, because they don't know if they're making the right choice. Who knows if they're making the right choice? And I also hope at some point that you just go, what just happened? Because there's a moment that I very much want to be that moment for people. So we'll see if
Hate
it
it when I
works.
lose my tank tread.
I
Um,
mean, look, the beauty of the AI running the tank is they have a lot of self-healing properties. So as long as they've got some loose material, they can reform those treads and, hard to take them offline. It's nice.
that's an easy one. That's an easy IFM way to deal with a lot of damage.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
so if I'm correct, I believe you also had another tome to your right that looked like it was going to be, big enough to.
Weapon. Yeah, keep it by the bedside. So this came out January 2nd. I believe the audio version is coming out soon. Down These Mean Streets is the third of the three anthologies that Larry Correia and Casey Izell, one of my favorite people in the entire world, put together. So the very first anthology was Noir Fatale, focused on, the femme fatale of noir stories in both science fiction and fantasy. So the stories ran the gamut. The second was No Game for Knights, which focused on the detective. And Down These Mean Streets is my first entry, and in the last entry, focuses on the city. So the city is a really key piece of noir. And I also would just like you guys to know that my eyes did not just tear up. I actively cried when I saw that my name was on a cover with these incredible people. Like, what? What? The stories, and then there are even more incredible people in the table of contents. These stories are so much fun. I am so excited to be a part of it. Also, my short story in here has one of my very favorite first lines of all time.
Which is
Um, the A thin film of peace laid over the city, like scum on standing water. Felt very noir. I was very excited about it.
so. What else can you tell us about that anthology for anybody that's needing to run out and get a taste?
Strongly recommend. So, I mean, you get stories by Laurel K. Hamilton. You get a story, one of each, by Larry Correia. You get a story by Steve Diamond. Like you get stories in any flavor of science fiction or fantasy. It just runs the entire spectrum. There are 14 stories, so you get 14 different flavors. Some cities are, Albuquerque. And that story is incredible. That's by Casey Moores, another incredible person. Oh my gosh. Focus in Albuquerque. I will give nothing else away, but it is a wedding gone horribly wrong. And if you don't have an incredible time reading that story, I'm sorry for your life because it's such a fun story. So you'll get like high tech futuristic cities, space stations, fantasy stories, San Francisco, Albuquerque, just this range of cities and the noir story that happens in it in a science fiction or fantasy flavor. This is another short story, mine personally. It's called The Ghosts of Cascada. So I made up the city. And it's another one that's like still in the back of my head, just thinking, hey, this could happen afterwards. Just BT dubs. I don't know if you know. Here's a fun thing. So it was good times.
So since you're getting out a couple of these nice big hits, and I can't help but to return back to AI in a tank, right? What was one of the strangest things you learned doing all the research and jumping down the rabbit holes?
Oh man. Um, I mean, quantum entanglement is just a mind the word I don't know that I can use because we're maybe not 15 minutes in. But it's just a complete like what? And the more like so in college, I was an English major. I took a bunch of astronomy classes and I found very quickly that introductory astronomy or super advanced theoretical astronomy loved it, wanted to talk about it all the time. That the intermediate stuff that you needed like hardcore math for and that was like, the important parts of astronomy. Nope. No, I didn't want that. But you get me in this theoretical, like, ooh, but what if these things happen? No wonder I'm a science fiction author. Like, and quantum entanglement, I know they're doing actual research. I know there are real stories or real studies and real experiments, but it's so very like, We don't know. It could be this. Can't tell me it's not this. So maybe it is. And that was a rabbit hole. Man, I spent some time there. I think one of the weirdest things though was in the cloning. So I got to talk to a very fancy doctor in nanogenetics. I'm getting that wrong, and I'm sorry to her. But she was telling me a lot about how cloning works and doesn't work. And for very important sci-fi reasons, I was like, well, it works like this. And I hand waved it. But learning how it actually works and the how DNA can look exactly the same but express itself differently. Like the codes are all the same, but the end result looks entirely different. Like you'll never get the same thing twice. It was just that was fascinating because you think building blocks, build a thing. Every time you use the blocks, you build the same thing. No, no, you don't.
Just because you run the code doesn't mean it's going to run the same way.
Right. Ever again. So
Little
it's
temperature
fascinating.
difference, little acidity difference, little bit of this, a little bit of that, and the next thing you wind up with is instead of sheep, you get well. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
Right. Right. You get a ship. I don't know.
so Marisa,
Yes, Jim.
what's next?
My gosh. 2024 is a very exciting year. So one thing that's coming up real soon in March is Valkyrie's initiative will kick off with Hit World Press. That's urban fantasy. So I get to run a series. It's a shared world with Hit World, run by William Allen Webb and Larry Hoy. And I get this little like sideline of it that I get to run. So we already have 3 books done, about 4 or 5 more in the hopper, and that all kicks off this year, which is super exciting. Um, I'm working on 2 other secret projects, so more to come. And then also car duels. So Hillbilly over at William Joseph Roberts over at Three Ravens is doing novels based on the Car Warriors from Steve Jackson games. And I have a trilogy coming out with that. If I can finish it, guys. Somehow you have to like write every day for books to get done. It's really strange. Um, but that will the first one of those will come out later this year also because I will finish it soon. So
This is that moment of it's better to have written than to be writing.
always, always that. Yeah. Especially because we just moved, right? And like when life is crazy, it's really hard. Word no good, word bad. So
Yeah,
get
yeah,
back into it.
you got a word good.
I got a
It's
word
only
good.
the good words.
Yes. They're all, first drafts are meant to be really messy, but sometimes it's so bad you're like, I'm gonna pause on this one for a minute. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, I have a couple of first drafts that might have just will never see the light of day. Start from scratch.
Yeah, just burn them. It's fine. I mean, I like to keep them because it you never know what you're gonna pull from it. This story, Beyond Enemies, was actually something entirely different. My first LibertyCon. So at LibertyCon, when you first go as a baby author, you get the chance to have a one-on-one with Bill Fawcett, who is just, brilliant industry expert, editor, author, knows his stuff, knows the world. And I was telling him about like all the cool stuff I was doing with the Four Horsemen and some other shared universes. And he's like, okay, no, that's super great. But what's your thing? What are you gonna do? And I was like, oh, yeah. And well, here's this idea I've been playing with. And I was telling him about it, and he's like, what about this thing? And he said something that like changed the whole thing. And I was like, oh my God. And I took like 8 pages of notes. It's a 15-minute conversation. I took so many notes. And then it just kind of sat there because I was doing other stuff and I wasn't sure. And then I wrote that short story for Chicks and Tank Tops, and I was like, oh, it's this. Oh, it's this. So I scavenged from that and I turned it into something else. So it was pretty exciting.
You never know when those notes are going to come back to haunt you.
That's right. In the best way. So yeah, don't burn them. Just save them for another day.
So where can people find you and all the stuff you got going on, website, social media, and of course, remind them what these books are that they need to be going and picking up tomorrow.
Things, yes, you can order it from the comfort of your couch. So you can find me on the internet at Marisa www.marisawolf. You can see it in my name here. .net or .com. I go both ways. You can also follow me on Instagram if you want. It is at Book Dogs because I'm going to talk about my books, and mostly I'm going to show you pictures of my dogs. You're welcome. So that's a fun one. And you can also catch me at some cons this year. So I will be at Mid South Con in March, in the corner of like Mississippi, Tennessee. I will be at Liberty Con in June and Dragon Con this fall. So come hang out. Lots of cool kids are going to these things. I hear Jim might be at some of those. So
They let me on my box now and then.
they do every once in a while, like twice a year. So yeah, so those are all good. And then you can get either both Down These Mean Streets, anywhere books are sold, audio coming soon, ebook and fancy hardcover available now. You can get Beyond Enemies. You can pre-order it if you are watching this before February 6th. If you're watching it after February 6th, you can just go buy it. Anywhere books are sold. So the Amazons, the Barnes and Nobles, the indie booksellers, they all have access to it. So
Thanks for hopping in to give us all the good news. And you can find me at jamesbnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, speculative-fiction-academy.com, creatingprose.com, and of course here at ConTinual. And we'll see you guys again soon. Go stack up that to be read pile.
whoop, whoop. Bye.